Hi everyone! Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot, as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. The brisk, resinous aroma of pine, typically a balm to Anya's spirit, now felt like a goad, each molecule a tiny barb hooking into the fragile tissue of memory. Kneeling by the creek, icy tendrils of water clawed at her skin as she scrubbed away the grime, that coppery ghost of old blood clinging stubbornly to the air. Pine. Always pine, the trigger, the portal. It flung her back to the mangled wreckage, a tapestry of fractured metal and glinting glass. Back to suffocating darkness pierced by the garbled cries of strangers, a chorus of the unfamiliar, offering no solace. She was 8, a miniature figure dwarfed by the carnage that had devoured her parents' car. The collision had stolen her breath, trapping her in a prison of twisted steel, the noxious fumes of gasoline a cloying shroud. Her parents' sight of them was a conscious avoidance, a refusal to acknowledge the irrevocable. Fear, a clammy serpent, coiled around her heart. Then, those eyes. Beyond comprehension. For a child, only the agony blazing in her leg registered, the panic swelling before them. Twin beacons in the gloom, radiating a light utterly alien, promising not mere hope, but deliverance. Anya squeezed her eyes shut, the image seared onto her retinas. The sedan shrieked, metal wailing in protest as a figure of impossible scale and power ripped the door asunder. No words, only those eyes, holding hers captive, pledging sanctuary. She recalled the effortless violence with which he'd peeled back the mangled chassis, the almost reverent care with which he'd extricated her from the debris, cradling her close. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of sirens and distorted sounds, yet in his embrace she knew a haven she could not have ever expected. Utter, complete safety. He carried her from the devastation, the keening cries, the reek of mortality. He halted only at the ambulance, relinquishing her to paramedics with a guttural rumble that silenced the surrounding bedlam. Then, oblivion. He dissolved into the night, a phantom of the shadows. She'd questioned everyone. Police, physicians, the aunt who became her guardian. None had witnessed him. No one believed her description of the man with silver eyes, dismissing it as the product of trauma, a child's imagination run amok in the face of unspeakable tragedy. But she knew the truth. She knew the brute force, the swiftness, the otherness that radiated from him. He had spared her life, and she vowed, with a certainty that resonated in her bones, to repay that debt. Years waned. Night terrors, dulled by time and treatment, became manageable. She matured, learned, grew resilient, stronger than anyone could have predicted for that traumatized child. She committed herself to understanding the creatures lurking in the margins, the shadows that preyed upon the vulnerable. She embraced the mantle of the protector, motivated not by thrills, but by the urge for retribution and the yearning to find him. She recognized him instantly. The moment she saw Ronan hauled into the holding cell, those silver eyes dimmed with anguish, and a hint of something far more ominous, something akin to despair. She registered the truth. The decades had taken their toll, fracturing him, not just aging him. The latent power remained, smoldering beneath a veneer of captivity. A spark, suppressed and degraded. He was a pale echo of the hero she remembered. And that was simply intolerable. Anya straightened, the glacial water sluicing off her fingers. The creek murmured, a lament that mirrored the hollowness within her. She was in his debt, irrevocably, and she wouldn't allow him to be destroyed. "Anya?" Liam's voice sliced through the blackness, tinged with apprehension. He stepped from the tree line, his face a canvas of worry. "What are you doing? We need to move." She pivoted, her expression hardening into resolve. "I'm not abandoning him, Liam." "You heard him," Liam countered, edging forward. "He doesn't want our help. He's dangerous." "He spared my life, Liam. He doesn't get to dictate my actions now." "That was a lifetime ago, Anya. He's a changed entity." Frustration laced Liam's tone. "He's cursed, Anya. We have no understanding of his capabilities." "Then we'll acquire some," she stated, her voice unyielding. "I refuse to forsake him." Liam emitted a sigh, raking a hand through his already chaotic hair. "You're playing a fool's game. This isn't a run-of-the-mill hunt, Anya. This is Ronan. This is unlike anything we've faced." "Precisely," Anya agreed, her gaze focused on the distant facility lights. "It's deeply personal." "Personal enough to stake your existence on it?" Liam challenged, his eyes boring into hers. "Personal enough to wager everything," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Liam scrutinized her, his expression a blend of exasperation and reluctant admiration. He knew her too well, understood the implacable force of her will, the devotion she felt for those she valued. Even if that person was a morose, cursed werewolf determined to alienate everyone around him. "Fine," he conceded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "We execute this by my rules. We require a strategy. We require intelligence. We can't simply rush in with guns blazing." Anya nodded, a flicker of a smile playing on her lips. "Agreed. We have to discover what we are facing. And we have to determine how to shatter this curse," Liam added gravely, "before it consumes him completely." They pivoted, heading back towards their concealed camp, the unspoken magnitude of their task weighing heavily upon them. The night was impenetrable, the air thick with anticipation. Anya was acutely aware that their path would be treacherous, perhaps even lethal. But she was prepared. She had to be. Ronan had saved her once. Now, she would reciprocate, even if it demanded confronting the encroaching darkness that threatened to engulf them both. Later, huddled around a snapping fire, Liam hammered at his laptop, streams of code cascading across the screen. Anya observed him, her thoughts racing, attempting to assemble the scattered knowledge she possessed about Ronan, werewolves, and curses. "Anything of value?" she inquired, her voice taut with anticipation. Liam shook his head, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Minimal. The Blackwood Pack has existed for centuries, formidable, reclusive, and notoriously aggressive. Ronan was their alpha, until this whole ordeal materialized." "And this affliction?" Liam paused, his fingers poised above the keyboard. "That's the quagmire. The legends are ambiguous, often conflicting. Some assert it's a blood curse, a lineage of suffering. Others claim retribution for some offense against ancient deities." "And your assessment?" "And your assessment?" Anya pressed, her eyes unwavering. Liam sighed. "I suspect we're grappling with something primeval, something potent, and something that Ronan unequivocally wants to keep us away from. He has no say in the matter," Anya asserted, her voice steeling. "He shielded me, Liam. I am indebted to him. And I honor my commitments." Liam glanced up at her, his expression softening. "I know you do," he replied quietly. "Which is why I'm here." He paused, then added, "But Anya, Exercise caution. This extends beyond simply repaying a debt. This is about a Ronin, and I fear that you're allowing sentiments from the past to obscure your judgment." Anya averted her gaze, focusing on the flickering flames. "Perhaps," she conceded softly. "But even if that's true, I can't abandon him." The fire flared, casting dancing shadows across their faces. The scent of pine lingered, a persistent echo of the night she had been spared, the night she swore an unspoken oath to repay the man with the silver eyes. An oath she fully intended to honor, whatever the consequences. Whispers of the wild alpha, a breath of wind, stirred Oakhaven, carrying hushed anxieties that quivered through the trees like aged vellum. Anya, returning from her errands, a laden basket of botanicals in hand, paused near the village well. A knot of women surrounded old Maggie, whose face was etched with time's passage. Their usual lively chatter was muted, replaced by an undercurrent of dread. "They claim he's truly become a beast," Maggie croaked, her voice like the rasp of stone on stone. "More feral than human. Doomed, they say." Anya's brow furrowed, her pace slowing. "Doomed? Who was the subject of their grim pronouncements?" "The Shadow Wolf," Ilara breathed, making a warding sign. "Ronin. He haunts the Blackwood's depths. A phantom among phantoms. Those who dare trespass never return." Ronin. The name resonated within Anya, a cold echo in her very bones. Memories surged, piercing gray eyes, the grip of a powerful arm amidst wreckage. Her rescuer. She struggled to steady her breath, a frantic pulse throbbing in her ears. Fragments of rumors had reached her before, whispers of growing peril in the Blackwood, of eerie howls slicing through the night. She dismissed them as fireside tales, meant to keep children close to home. But Ronin. The idea was monstrous. He was always different, Maggie mused, her gaze lost in the distance. Intense, imposing, but the curset warped him, corrupted. "Some whisper he courted it," Ilara added, scarcely audible. "Dabbling in matters best left undisturbed, primeval forces, forbidden arts." Anya's fingers tightened around the basket's handle, the rough weave biting into her skin. She could bear no more. These women, steeped in their fears, knew nothing of the man beneath the monster. With a sharp turn, Anya retreated, the whispers nipping at her heels. She hurried homeward, the image of Ronin's gaze seared into her mind. She needed answers. Her cottage, though small, was redolent with the comforting scents of dried herbs and beeswax. Liam, her childhood companion, was absorbed in his craft, meticulously shaping wood. He looked up, concern creasing his forehead. "You seem troubled, Anya," he observed, his voice a deep murmur. "What plagues you?" Anya set down the basket, her hands betraying a slight tremor. "They speak of Ronin," she began, her voice hushed. "They say he's under a curse, transformed." Liam's features hardened. "The Shadow Wolf? It's just hearsay, Anya. Superstition taking flight. But what if it isn't?" Anya implored, her eyes searching his. "What if he requires aid?" Liam sighed, raking a hand through his dark hair. "Anya, surely you jest. He is a danger. A known one. Steer clear of the Blackwood." "I am indebted to him, Liam," Anya insisted, her voice unwavering. "He spared my life. I cannot simply ignore this." Liam's jaw clenched. He recognized that glint in her eyes, a resolve that defied reason. He also knew the strength of her devotion. the fierce loyalty she extended to those she held dear. "And what, pray tell, do you intend?" he challenged, a note of skepticism sharpening his tone. "Saunter into the Blackwood and dispel a curse with sweet words and goodwill?" Anya remained silent. She knew it seemed a fool's errand, brazen even. Yet, she couldn't escape the conviction that she was the only one who could reach him. That night, after Liam's departure, Anya immersed herself in her grandmother's chronicles. The old woman, a healer and seer, had possessed an intimate understanding of the forest and the secret energies that pulsed through the land. Anya had inherited her grandmother's gift of sensitivity to the veiled world, a profound connection to the earth. The journals overflowed with arcane notes, Yuld cures, and stern warnings concerning the perils of dark arts. Anya sought any reference to Ronan, to the affliction that had supposedly turned him bestial. Hours bled into one another, the only sans the scratch of her quill and the snapping embers in the hearth. Finally she unearthed it. A solitary entry, tucked away in an overlooked corner, penned in her grandmother's delicate script. The Shadow Wolf, a lineage tainted by ambition, a price exacted for power, sought in forbidden realms. The enchantment can be undone, but only by a love that eclipses fear, a sacrifice freely offered. Anya's heart hammered against her ribs. A love that eclipses fear, a sacrifice freely offered. The words hung in the air, laden with unanswered questions. She reread the passage, parsing each phrase, seeking a glimmer of understanding. But the meaning remained elusive, a conundrum wrapped in enigma. Despite the uncertainty, a sense of purpose solidified within her. She knew her path. She had to find Ronan. She had to comprehend the curse. And she had to discover how to redeem him, even if it demanded everything she possessed. At dawn, Anya packed a small satchel with medicinal herbs, salves, and several of her grandmother's most potent concoctions. She left a message for Liam, outlining her intentions, knowing his ire would be roused, yet trusting he would ultimately understand. Stepping out of the cottage, the nascent sun painted the village in long, ethereal shadows. She inhaled deeply, drawing the invigorating morning air into her lungs. She understood the dangers that lay ahead, that the Blackwood was a domain of shadows and secrets. But her resolve was unshaken. She was bound to Ronan by a debt of life, and she would not rest until that debt was honored. Facing the forbidding edge of the forest, Anya commenced her journey, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. She was but one woman, armed with little more than her intuition, her spirit, and the memory of those silver eyes that had once spared her. Yet she was prepared to confront whatever awaited, to challenge the darkness, and to fight for the man who had once saved her own life. The whispers of the Shadow Wolf receded behind her as she ventured into the unknown, her heart a battleground of apprehension and fortitude. The dilapidated cabin, the heavy air, saturated with the musk of wet soil and resinous pine, clung to Anya as she emerged from Blackwood's final grasping tendrils. Before her loomed a wreck, a far cry from the sturdy haven her grandmother had painted. The cabin sagged, its timbers consumed by decay, the roof slumped like the spine of an aged beast. Virulent moss, a smothering emerald tide, scaled the walls, obscuring faded remnants of paint. The sole window was a barricade of splintered planks, a testament to desperate attempts at escape or violent intrusion. A cold premonition settled upon Anya, a stark contrast to the hopeful fire that had driven her. She advanced gingerly, her fingers tracing the hilt of the silver dagger hidden beneath her cloak. An unsettling quiet pressed in, punctuated only by the melancholic plink of water falling from the eaves. She called out, the sound swallowed by the oppressive stillness. "Ronan? It's Anya Petrova." The response was instantaneous. A raw, bestial growl that resonated through the very ground. It erupted from the cabin's depths, a sound of pure, untamed fury. Anya's breath hitched, her blood turning glacial. This bore no resemblance to the man who had rescued her from the inferno of her family's carriage, the man whose silver gaze held a spark of compassion amidst the carnage. Suddenly, the boarded window exploded inward, shards of wood flying as if propelled by an unseen force. A figure filled the jagged opening, a silhouette against the inner gloom. It was vaguely man-shaped, yet grotesquely altered, twisted. A deep rumble vibrated from its throat, laced with a torment that was almost tangible. Then the creature shifted, and a single incandescent silver eye burned through the darkness, fixing on Anya. A flicker of recognition, or something akin to it, flashed in that single eye, followed by a wave of anguish that seemed to saturate the very air surrounding the structure. The creature recoiled, melting back into the shadows. "Go!" A voice grated, barely audible, yet venomous. "Get away, Anya. You shouldn't be here." It was undeniably Ronan's voice, yet corrupted, perverted by something profoundly dark. His words were slurred, each syllable a struggle. Anya inched forward, her heart aching at his evident suffering. "Ronan, it's me. I've come to help." A harsh, derisive laugh echoed from within the cabin's confines. "Help? You imagine you can mend this? Look at me, girl. I'm beyond redemption. I'm a monster." He lurched back into the faint light, revealing the appalling extent of his transformation. His frame was stooped and deformed, skin stretched thin as parchment across his bones. Coarse, jet-black fur sprouted in patches across his arms and shoulders. His hands ended in wickedly curved claws. Yet it was his face that truly shattered Anya's resolve. His features were warped, his jaw elongated into a lupine muzzle. The silver eyes, once possessing a quiet strength, now blazed with an untamed savagery. This is what you wish to save?" he snarled, his voice a guttural rasp. "This thing?" Anya stood firm, her fear momentarily suppressed by a surge of fierce resolve. She had anticipated a difficult path. The shadow wolf had haunted her nightmares, its savagery whispered in chilling tales. But witnessing Ronan trapped within this monstrous form only solidified her purpose. "I remember the man who saved me," she asserted, her voice steady, unwavering. "The man who risked everything to drag me from the flames. That's the man I'm here to save." Ronan recoiled, as if struck physically. The madness in his gaze dimmed momentarily, supplanted by a flicker of something akin to shame. "You don't understand," he breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "This isn't a curse you can dispel with a simple potion or incantation. This festers inside me. It's become part of me." "Then we'll fight it together," Anya declared, advancing another step. "I'm not afraid, Ronan." He bared his teeth in a feral grimace. "You should be. Leave now, before I harm you." "You won't," she countered, her voice ringing with a conviction that surprised even her. "I know you won't." Ronan stared at her, his expression a tormented collision of rage and despair. He flinched back, retreating further into the cabin's murky depths. "You've no concept of what you're courting," he growled. "Flee while you still possess the chance. Return to your life, your family. Obliterate all memory of me." "I can't," Anya replied, her voice soft yet unwavering. I owe you everything, Ronan, and I don't abandon those I cherish. The ensuing silence stretched taut, heavy. Anya could discern Ronan's labored breathing, the low, menacing growl that vibrated in his chest. She could sense the raw power surging from him, the barely leashed fury threatening to consume him utterly. At last he spoke, his voice a mere exhalation. Then you are a fool, Anya Petrova. A beautiful, courageous fool. And you are about to meet your end. He turned away, dissolving into the blackness of the cabin's interior. The shattered window remained agape, a gaping wound in the decaying wood. Anya stood there, solitary in the encroaching dusk, the aroma of damp earth and pine suffocatingly thick in the air. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the core, that she had walked directly into a snare, yet she also knew that retreat was impossible. She had made a promise, not only to Ronan, but to herself. She would not allow him to be lost to the darkness. She would deliver him, even at the cost of her own life. Easing the beast, the stench of wet fur and decay clung to the air, thick enough to taste. Anya ignored it, her focus solely on the monstrous figure hunched before the fireplace. Ronan, or what remained of him, trembled, each ragged breath a guttural snarl. Blood matted the fur around his shoulders, the remnants of self-inflicted wounds where he'd clawed at his own flesh. Ronan, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper against the storm raging outside. Let me help you. He flinched as if struck. Get out, he growled, the sound vibrating through his massive frame. I warned you. There's nothing you can do. Anya knelt, uncasing her satchel. Moonlight filtering through the grimy windows illuminated the tools of her trade. Bandages, salves, and a small mortar and pestle for grinding herbs. The scent of lavender and chamomile, usually so comforting, seemed fragile and inadequate against the oppressive atmosphere. These wounds fester, she said, her fingers already busy crushing dried comfrey root. They'll poison you if left unattended. Ronan remained motionless, a statue of fur and fury. Anya knew it was a battle of wills. He was fighting her, fighting himself, fighting the very essence of the beast that consumed him. Please, she pleaded, her voice laced with a desperation she hadn't allowed herself to feel until now. Let me ease your pain, just for a little while. Silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the crackling fire. Anya continued preparing the poultice, her movements deliberate and calm, projecting a serenity she didn't entirely possess. Finally, Ronan shifted, a low groan escaping his throat. Don't touch me, he rasped, his voice raw and strained. Anya looked up, meeting his gaze. Even in the dim light, she could see the torment in his silver eyes, the remnants of the man she remembered battling the monster. Within, I won't hurt you, she promised, her voice firm. I only want to help. Slowly, cautiously, she reached out, her hand hovering near a particularly deep gash on his shoulder. He flinched again, but this time, he didn't pull away. His muscles were rigid beneath her fingertips. Anya began to cleanse the wound with a damp cloth, her touch feather light. Ronan hissed, a sound that could have been pain or a grudging acceptance. She worked in silence, meticulously cleaning away the dirt and blood, her brow furrowed in concentration. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Why are you doing this? Ronan asked, his voice barely audible. Anya didn't look up. You saved me once, she said simply. Now it's my turn. That was a long time ago, he said, his words laced with bitterness. I'm not the same man. I know, Anya said softly, but you're not gone. She applied the comfrey poultice to the wound, the earthy scent filling the air. Ronan tensed, but he didn't fight her. As she bandaged his shoulder, their fingers brushed. A jolt of electricity, unexpected and undeniable, surged through her. She quickly withdrew her hand, her cheeks flushed. "Thank you," Ronan mumbled, the words barely audible. Anya continued to treat his wounds, working her way down his massive frame. With each touch, she felt a flicker of connection, a fragile bridge forming between them. He remained, quote, mostly still, his breathing gradually becoming less ragged. After what felt like an eternity, she finished. Ronan sat slumped against the wall, his eyes closed, his breathing deep and even. The air in the cabin felt different, less oppressive, as if the storm raging within him had subsided, at least for a moment. Anya gathered her supplies, her movements quiet and respectful. As she packed away the bandages, she noticed Ronan watching her, his silver eyes narrowed. "You're not afraid?" he asked, his voice low and gravelly. Anya met his gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. "I am," she admitted. "But I won't let fear control me." Ronan chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "You're a fool," he said. "You should run while you still can." "Maybe," Anya said, a small smile playing on her lips. "But I'm not going anywhere." She stood, her gaze unwavering. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said, "to check on your wounds." Ronan didn't reply, his eyes already closing. Anya turned and walked towards the door, leaving him alone in the flickering firelight. As she stepped out into the storm, she knew she was walking into danger, but she also knew she was doing the right thing. She had a debt to repay and a man to save. Even if that man was a monster, echoes of the past, the ghost of pine needles lingered in the chilled air, a faint echo of the woods now behind them. Anya settled beside the rough-hewn cot, her fingers feathering across the coarse blanket draped over Ronan's unmoving form. He hadn't so much as twitched since she'd finished cleaning his injuries. Only the measured cadence of his breath offered proof of life, a fragile counterpoint to the monster festering within. Her gaze traveled to the campfire, its lively dance mirroring the storm raging inside her. A snap and pop from the flames sent a shower of embers spiraling upward, each a tiny beacon igniting a recollection, a memory of rain-glazed asphalt, shattered steel, and argent eyes blazing with fierce determination. The raw tang of iron. That was her initial sensation. Then, the immense pressure of the car roof compressing her small frame, stealing the air from her lungs. The world dissolved into a chaotic swirl of pain and terror, punctuated by the garbled shouts of unseen rescuers. She had been a mere 8 years old, returning home late at night with her parents. A deer had bolted across their path, and her father, attempting to avert disaster, had veered sharply, losing control. The vehicle had catapulted off the road, colliding with a massive oak. Anya squeezed her eyes shut, striving to suppress the visions, but they persisted, relentless. The heavy silence following the crash. Then her mother's soft moans and the grating screech of metal as rescuers struggled to extricate them. She recalled being trapped, pinned beneath the dashboard, the sharp odor of gasoline permeating the air. Constricted her throat, a silent scream trapped within. Then, a different sound sliced through the pandemonium, a low, guttural growl that resonated deep within her bones. Suddenly, the crushing weight eased. A powerful hand, scarred and resolute, breached the mangled metal, carefully removing the debris trapping her. She looked up, her vision swimming with tears, and glimpsed him. Even then, he was a titan, a figure of imposing stature. His face was etched with worry, his silver eyes burning with an intensity that simultaneously terrified and reassured her. He uttered not a sound, focusing solely on her liberation, his movements precise and deliberate despite the palpable danger to himself. "Easy now, little one." He had finally gravelled, his voice a deep thrum that seemed to calm her fear. "We're going to get you out of here." Ronan recalled that night as a haze of pure instinct and adrenaline. He had been tracking a wandering wolf pack through the forest when the shriek of tires and the sickening crunch reached his ears. He'd arrived on the scene to discover a twisted wreck, the air thick with the stench of spilled fuel and raw terror. The other humans were paralyzed, overwhelmed by the carnage. He could discern the faint whimpers of a child, and something deep within him, something primeval and protective, surged to the forefront. He hadn't considered the consequences, but the potential exposure. Only reaching that child mattered. He remembered the feel of the contorted metal yielding beneath his hands, the almost casual ease with which he'd torn it asunder to reach her. He remembered the child's enormous, frightened eyes, mirroring the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles. Vulnerable, he had thought, the word echoing in the silent chambers of his mind. Protect her. He had delivered her into the care of the paramedics, then melted back into the darkness, the primal urge subsiding as swiftly as it had arisen. He had watched as they loaded her into the ambulance, a small broken doll enveloped in blankets. He had remained until the ambulance vanished down the highway, its siren a mournful lament in the night. He never anticipated seeing her again. Anya remembered the chaotic rush to the hospital, the blur of illumination and unfamiliar faces. She remembered the doctors and nurses, their voices soft and comforting. But above all, she remembered the silver eyes, the strong hands that had extricated her from the wreckage. She had inquired about him, inevitably, but no one seemed to possess any knowledge of his identity. The authorities had scoured the vicinity, but found no trace. They speculated that he was merely a passerby, a good Samaritan who had vanished as quickly as he had materialized. But Anya knew better. She knew he was more than just a passing stranger. Something set him apart, something potent and untamed. She had witnessed it in his gaze, in his gait, in the almost preternatural strength he had displayed. She never forgot him. As she healed, both physically and emotionally, she carried his memory as a guiding star in the darkness. He had saved her life, and in doing so, he had gifted her a purpose to repay her debt, to locate him, to somehow reciprocate the kindness. Now, years later, she had succeeded. But he was no longer the stalwart, silent guardian she remembered. He was fractured, cursed, consumed by the very darkness he had once shielded her from. But beneath the monstrous facade, she still recognized the man with the silver eyes, the man who had saved her life, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she would dedicate herself to saving him in return. She straightened from her kneeling position, her resolve solidifying. The fire snapped once more, casting a spray of sparks heavenward. She would not permit him to surrender to the encroaching darkness. She would fight for him, even if it required confronting the beast within. She owed him everything. More than that, she desired to. Anya approached the bed and gently swept a stray lock of hair from Ronan's brow. His skin felt cool to her touch, his breathing shallow and uneven. She stilled, collecting her thoughts, focusing all her energy, channeling her determination. She would not fail him. Not now. The shadow of Gregor Dustmotes pirouetted in the lone moonbeam slicing through the library's gloom. Anya traced a finger across the age-worn spine of another book, the vellum a cool, strangely vital texture against her skin. Hours melted away within the Blackwood estate's forgotten core, immersed in decaying tomes whispering long-buried secrets. Upstairs, Ronan remained consumed by his inner turmoil, unseen since sunrise. She hunted phantoms, she knew, yet even shades could conceal truth. The village elder had termed Ronan's affliction an ancient curse, stitched into the very earth beneath them. And Anya suspected this land guarded its truths within these very pages. She plucked a volume from the shelf. De Umbris Luporum, concerning the shadows of wolves, the faded gold title declared. A cold tremor skittered down her spine. This felt different, charged. She carried it to her makeshift table, candlelight summoning phantasmal shadows that seemed to coil with independent life. Dense Latin script crowded the pages, punctuated by unsettling depictions of warped wolves and arcane symbols. Thankfully, Anya's Latin lessons hadn't been entirely wasted. Slowly, she began to decipher the text. It detailed a corruption, a dark influence forcibly imposed upon a werewolf, perverting its spirit and amplifying its basest drives, reducing it to a feral engine. The process involved a complex rite, the lifeblood of a rival Pax Alpha, and an archaic relic known as the Stone of Thorns. Her breath caught. The Stone of Thorns. She recalled Ronan muttering about it during a rare moment of clarity, a prize Gregor coveted. Anya leafed through the brittle pages, her heart hammering. There, amidst a meticulous description of the ritual, a name surfaced, Gregor. Not merely a mention, but a chronicle of Gregor's insatiable ambition, his craving for dominion, his plot to seize Ronan's territory for his own. The text painted Gregor as a ruthless schemer, utterly devoid of compassion. He yearned for absolute control and wouldn't hesitate to obtain it. With sickening clarity, the pieces fell into place. Gregor sought not merely Ronan's land, but to break him, to puppet him, to wield him as a weapon. The curse wasn't a random misfortune, it was a calculated act of aggression. Nausea crested over Anya. She slumped back in her chair, the book slipping from nerveless fingers to land with a muffled sound. The implications were devastating. Ronan fought not just a curse, but a war, a meticulously planned assault by a man who knew his weaknesses and exploited them with cruel efficiency. She pictured Ronan above, wrestling with the beast within, oblivious to the conspiracy against him. He was fighting a loaded battle, and Gregor, lurking somewhere, manipulated him like a marionette. Anya pushed herself up from the table, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. She had to warn Ronan. He deserved to know the truth, to understand the nature of his enemy. But as she neared the door, fresh dread washed over her. If Gregor was capable of such depths, what else did he have planned? What lengths would he travel to grasp his aims? And what part did she, Anya, play in his game? She was a mere piece, she realized, a tool to be used against Ronan. Gregor was aware of her, he had to be. He knew of her connection to Ronan, the burden of debt she carried, the fierce fidelity that motivated her. Anya paused, her hand hovering near the doorknob. Revealing the truth to Ronan would only compound his peril. It would make him a marked man, vulnerable not only to Gregor's dark magic, but to his physical force. And if Gregor had her pegged, she was a liability, a vulnerability ripe for manipulation. She retracted her hand, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She couldn't risk it. Not yet. More information was needed, a complete picture of Gregor's scheme, before confronting Ronan. Anya returned to the table, her gaze devouring the text, searching for any clue, any hint of Gregor's subsequent move. The candlelight flickered erratically, casting elongated, spectral shadows on the walls, amplifying the library's ominous atmosphere. Alone, ensnared in a tangled web of treachery and peril, she had only her wits and her unshakable resolve to guide her. Abruptly, a bridge cracked outside the window. Anya stilled, every nerve on high alert. She strained her hearing, seeking any telltale sound, any confirmation of an intruder. Silence reigned, but it was a palpable silence, humming with unspoken menace. Anya seized the heavy iron poker propped against the hearth. A clumsy weapon, but better than defenselessness. She edged toward the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. Peering through a gap in the curtains, her gaze swept the darkness. Nothing moved, only the whisper of leaves in the wind. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes scrutinizing her from the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to pounce. Anya released a ragged breath and backed away from the window. Caution was paramount. Griggle was playing a deadly game, and she was the quarry. She couldn't afford a single misstep. Extinguishing the candle, she plunged the library into absolute darkness. Moonlight streamed through the window aperture, bathing the room in a ghostly light. Anya moved soundlessly, dissolving into the shadows, becoming one with the darkness. She knew Grigor was coming. She felt it in her marrow. He was coming for Ronan, and he would crush anyone who stood in his path. Anya had to prepare. Ronan must be shielded, even at the cost of her own safety. She closed her eyes, taking a steadying breath, bracing herself for the conflict ahead. She was more than just a girl repaying a debt. She was a guardian, a sentinel, a bulwark against the encroaching darkness. And she would not break. The silence extended, broken only by the distant lament of a lone wolf. Anya waited, her senses exquisitely sharp, her hand welded to the iron poker. Gregor's shadow loomed, threatening to consume them all. And Anya understood, with an icy certainty, that the night had only just begun. Hunted the forest was tomb silent, a stillness that pulsed with unseen danger, like the held breath of a predator. Anya adjusted her stance, her fingers brushing the hilt of the small knife secured to her thigh. Ronan, senses honed to a razor's edge, stood rigid. The air, heavy with the resinous tang of pine and the musk of decaying leaves, shifted, a sharp, metallic scent slicing through the familiar aromas, the unmistakable reek of rival werewolves. Close, Ronan rumbled, the sound vibrating low in his throat. Gregor's pack. His patience has run thin. Before she could respond, the woods exploded. 3 brutes, misshapen and grotesque, lunged from the shadows, their eyes blazing with feral hunger. Towering over Ronan's human frame, their bodies were warped by a sadistic glee. One struck, claws ripping through empty air where Anya had just stood. She scrambled behind a gnarled oak, the rough bark biting into her back as she fought for purchase. Ronan met the onslaught head-on. A blur of motion, bones contorting and reforming, heralded his transformation. But something was amiss. His movements were stilted, his snarls tainted with pain. The curse, magnified by Gregor's dark influence, gnawed at him from within. He fought with desperate fury, tearing into one of the attackers. But the remaining 2 circled, their gazes locked on Anya. They sensed her vulnerability. One peeled away, flanking the oak. Anya gripped her knife, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She was no warrior, not like Ronan, but she refused to be prey. The werewolf attacked, fangs bared in a gruesome grin. Anya reacted on instinct, throwing herself sideways and slashing with the knife. The blade found purchase on its flank, eliciting a surprised yelp. It stumbled back, granting Anya a precious reprieve to regain her feet. Seeing her threatened, Ronan roared, a sound of primal fury, and slammed into the attacker, sending it sprawling. "Go, Anya," he bellowed, his voice a guttural rasp. "Head for the river." Without hesitation, knowing argument futile, Anya turned and sprinted, the sounds of brutal combat echoing in her wake. Twigs cracked beneath her pounding feet as she navigated the dense undergrowth, her lungs burning with the exertion. A quick glance over her shoulder revealed Ronan holding his own, but clearly flagging. His movements were labored, his fur slick with blood, both his and his enemies'. The river. It was imperative she reach the river. But why? There was no time for contemplation. The werewolf she'd wounded was gaining, moving with horrifying implacable speed, its breath a hot gust on her neck. She stumbled, crashing to her knees. Scrambling back, terror widened her eyes as the beast loomed. Just as it prepared to strike, a shadow engulfed them. Ronan, a tapestry of wounds, slammed into the werewolf, knocking it away from Anya. He stood before her, a bulwark against the darkness, his chest heaving, his gaze burning with a desperate resolve. "Get out of here, Anya," he grated, his voice raw. "I can't protect you if you stay." Anya shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "I'm not leaving you, Ronan." There was no time for debate. The other werewolf was returning, and they were closing the net. Ronan knew he couldn't win this. Not like this. He needed to buy her time. "The river!" he roared, his voice breaking. "The water weakens them. It's our only chance." Understanding finally dawned. Water, a symbol of purity, repelled the corruption. It wouldn't cure Ronan, but it might offer a sliver of advantage. She seized his arm, pulling him toward the water. He resisted momentarily, then yielded, knowing her logic sound. They ran, shoulder to shoulder, the werewolves in relentless pursuit. The trees dissolved into a green blur as they plunged deeper into the woods. The air turned cool, saturated with moisture. The scent of the river filled Anya's senses, a beacon of hope. They burst from the trees and onto the embankment. The river churned, a ribbon of dark fury reflecting the stormy heavens. Without pause, Anya plunged in, the frigid water a jolt to her system. She gasped, her breath seizing in her throat. Ronan faltered at the edge. His wolf form trembled, his eyes mirroring a torment beyond physical pain. "I can't," he choked, his voice a bare whisper. "I can't control it, Anya. The wolf, it's taking over." Anya waded back, the water swirling around her waist. She reached for his hand, her grip unwavering. "Yes, you can, Ronan. I know you can. You saved me once. Now it's my turn." She pulled him into the river. The instant the water lapped at his fur, Ronan convulsed, a tortured scream ripping from his throat. His body twisted, his wolf form morphing into something even more monstrous. His eyes, once silver, now burned with a malevolent crimson glow. Anya held on, refusing to release him. She stared into his eyes, searching for a spark of the man she loved. "Ronan," she pleaded, her voice trembling yet firm. "Fight it. Fight the darkness. I believe in you." For a fleeting moment, she thought she glimpsed recognition. The crimson faded, replaced by a flicker of silver. He squeezed her hand, a silent promise, but the reprieve was ephemeral. The curse was too consuming. With a final agonizing bellow, Ronan succumbed. His wolf form hardened, larger and more feral than before. He snarled at Anya, his eyes devoid of humanity. The beast was in complete control. The other werewolves arrived at the bank, their eyes gleaming with triumphant anticipation. They hesitated before the water. But Gregor's influence held sway. They knew their task. Anya felt trapped. Ronan, lost to the curse, was no longer an ally. He was a danger, and Gregor's pack was closing in for the kill. She faced a desperate choice: fight, flee, or somehow, against all odds, reach the man buried beneath the monster. The odds were impossible, but surrender was not an option. She had come too far. She owed him everything. And deep in her heart, she believed that somewhere within that beast, Ronan remained, waiting for rescue, shared scars. The river was a churning beast, a watery blockade against the encroaching gloom. A bestial reek-damp pelt and iron tang permeated the air, Gregor's pack issuing its savage challenge. But the true nightmare stood before her: Ronan, or what was left of him. A titan of shadow and sinew, his gaze blazed with a primal ferocity she'd never imagined. His snarl, a raw, broken chord of torment and fury, vibrated through her very bones. Anya tightened her grip on the crude spear, its shaft slick with nervous sweat. Ronan, she breathed, her plea swallowed by the river's tumult and the wolves' ravenous snarls. "It's me! Don't you remember?" The massive head cocked. A flicker was it confusion, recognition, momentarily tempering the crimson fire in his eyes. It was enough, a fragile ember in the overwhelming night. She had to fan it. "Remember the woods, Ronan? Our meeting? You shielded me." Each syllable was a bridge strung across an abyss. The beast lumbered closer, not with the pack's ravenous charge, but tentatively. "He's struggling," a voice rasped from the darkness. Gregor, with 2 alpha wolves at his flanks, materialized in the flickering moonlight. "Impressive, girl. But sentiment is a flimsy leash. The curse runs deep." A cruel smile twisted his lips, sending a cold tremor through Anya. "Join us. Give yourself to the power. Ronan will be yours, your shield, your mate." What higher purpose could a stray ask for? Anya spat, the globule lost to the mud. "I'd choose death." Gregor's laugh was a dry, grating sound. "Then your wish will be granted soon enough." A gesture unleashed the pack. "Take her, and bring Ronan to me. He needs a lesson in obedience." The werewolves lunged, their eyes burning with unholy desire. Anya braced herself, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She couldn't win. Not like this. But she could buy him time. Time to wrestle back his soul. She evaded the first assault, claws ripping through her sleeve. The spear thrust, aimed for its heart, was met with brutal force, the blow deflected, sending her sprawling. As the wolf descended, fangs bared, a thunderous roar shattered the night. "Ronan." He exploded toward the attacker, a maelstrom of fur and muscle. The 2 titans collided in a barbaric waltz of tooth and claw. Anya scrambled up, her mind spinning. He was defending her. Even warped into a monster, a fragment of the man remained. The combat was savage, unending. Ronan, amplified by the curse, possessed inhuman speed and strength. But the pack closed in, a ring of predators tightening around him. He couldn't withstand them all. She had to act. Think. The river. Its churning surface reflected the fractured moonlight. It sapped their strength. She had seen it. "Ronan!" she screamed, her voice ragged. "The water! Get to the water!" A flicker of comprehension lit his eyes. Then, with a Herculean leap, he plunged into the frigid torrent. The transformation was immediate. His movements turned sluggish, his snarls diminished. The pack faltered, their eyes darting with uncertainty. They recoiled from the water's edge. Gregor's frustration boomed. Finish him! Now! This was it. Seizing a fallen branch, its broken end sharpened to a point, she charged into the fray. She fought with a raw ferocity she hadn't known she possessed, fueled by desperation and love. She was no match for their brute strength, but she was nimble, quick. She dodged, twisted, stabbed, buying Ronan precious seconds. Finally, bruised and bleeding, she drove the makeshift spear deep into the thigh of one of the wolves, eliciting a howl of agony as it stumbled back. Doubt rippled through the pack. Ronan, weakened by the river, clawed his way from the water, his eyes no longer blazing with bestial rage, but clouded with pain and turmoil. He looked at Anya, his gaze a desperate plea. He was losing the battle within. "Anya," he groaned, his voice a guttural rasp, barely recognizable. "Run. Please, run." Tears flowed freely. She wouldn't abandon him. Not again. Not ever. "I'm not leaving, Ronan. We'll face this. Together." She stepped toward him, hand outstretched. "Remember the stories, Ronan? The ones we cherished. Remember the fireflies, the laughter, the hope we saw in each other?" He flinched, his body convulsing. I can't control it." "Then let me guide you," she said, her voice steady but gentle. "Let me be your anchor. Let me remind you who you are." She reached out, her fingers tracing the harsh contours of his transformed face. His skin was rough, alien, but beneath the fur and muscle, she could still feel the man she loved. And then, against all odds, his eyes cleared. The feral wildness retreated, replaced by a spark of recognition, of affection, of a faint ember of hope. He clasped her hand, his grip surprisingly tender. "Anya," he breathed, his voice still gravelly, but undeniably his own. I remember." The moment hung precariously, ephemeral and fragile. Gregor unleashed a furious roar, and the remaining wolves surged forward, their hunger ignited anew. But in that brief, sacred instant, Anya knew she wasn't battling a monster. She was fighting for a man worth sacrificing everything for. A man who, despite the encroaching darkness, still clung to the light within. The fight was far from won, but now they stood united, hand in hand, heart to heart, bound by a love that defied curses and shadows. The beast within mud plastered the training field, the air sharp with blood's coppery bite. Not Ronan's yet, though dread coiled in Anya's gut, whispering of its inevitability. He fought with a savage intensity, each swing of his wooden sword carrying the force of a maul. Anya met his assault, weaving defenses with practiced grace, her movements economical. But a disquieting shift colored the day. His eyes, normally the warm gleam of polished silver, were now liquid mercury, reflecting a hidden torment she couldn't soothe. A guttural rumble vibrated from his depths with each exertion, a sound divorced from combat, born of the beast tearing at his insides. It was subtle, yet Anya felt it like the prelude to an earthquake, a subtle tremor promising devastation. He advanced, relentless. She stumbled, a root snagging her foot. In a heartbeat, he loomed over her, weapon raised. But instead of the decisive arc she braced for, the practiced sword faltered, then slipped from his suddenly lax grip, landing with a wet thud. Ronan gasped, clutching at his head, knuckles bone white against his temples. "Anya," he croaked, his voice a raw scrape. "Stay away." A frigid fear gripped her. This wasn't the Ronan she cherished, the one who fought with honor and control, even amidst strife. This was the wolf straining at its leash, the darkness she'd sworn to quell. "Ronan, what is it?" Her voice, soft, implored him to tame the beast. She edged closer, extending a hand. He flinched back as if scorched. "Don't, please, just leave." His eyes flickered, a glimpse of true silver battling the encroaching mercury sheen. In that brief moment of lucidity, she glimpsed raw, stark terror. He feared himself. Refusing retreat, she rooted herself to the spot, her voice resolute. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening." He averted his gaze, his frame trembling. "It's worsening, Anya. The shifts they're more frequent, prolonged. I can feel the wolf taking root, devouring me." He raked a hand through his already disarrayed hair, tugging as if to physically excise the beast. Anya closed the space between them, ignoring his plea. "Taking root? How?" He spun around, his eyes now wholly the color of quicksilver, yet clouded with anguish. "It's more than skin. It's my thoughts, my very being. They're turning feral. I have urges, Anya, barely suppressible urges. I dream of the chase, of rending, of desires I can't utter." His voice fractured, a stifled sob escaping his lips. "Then we will battle it," Anya asserted, her voice unwavering. "We will discover a method to hinder this, to exert our command." He offered a brittle, joyless laugh. "You don't grasp it. There is no mastering it. It's a craving, an unappeasable void. And soon, I'll lose the fight." He retreated, creating more distance between them. "That's why you must flee. While I still retain some semblance of reason, you need to run. Find sanctuary, far from my reach." Anya shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "I made a vow, Ronan. I swore to aid you. I will not retract that vow now, when you require me most." "You owe me nothing, Anya," he countered, his voice heightening. "I safeguarded you once, ages past. That's all. You've more than even that score. Now, save yourself." "This isn't about ledgers," she cried, her voice cracking with emotion. "It's about us, our bond." He recoiled as if struck a tangible blow. "There is no us, Anya, not henceforth. There is only the wolf, and it will taint all it touches, especially you." He turned his back to her once more. "I beg of you, Anya, for your own sake, flee, before it is too late." She stood frozen for a protracted moment, the initial drops of rain beginning to fall, slicking her hair to her brow. The atmosphere thrummed with unspeakable words, the gravity of their interwoven past, their burgeoning affection, and the horrifying truth of the affliction threatening to shatter their world. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible. "If that's your true desire, Ronan, if you genuinely believe my departure is the sole means of safeguarding me, then I will leave, but I will not surrender. We'll uncover the means to break this blight. I will find the means to salvage you, even if it demands confronting the beast firsthand." She turned and began walking away, her heart leaden, her pace measured. She felt his gaze boring into her back, filled with a blend of anguish, remorse, and a desperate, unspoken entreaty, but she dared not look back. She couldn't, for if she did, she knew she would be incapable of leaving. And perhaps, just perhaps, he was correct. Perhaps severing ties was the only way to protect them both. For now. Later, ensconced in her meager chamber, as rain lashed against the window, Anya scrutinized the time-worn, leather-bound tome Gregor had gifted her, a detailed account of the curse's origins, its rituals, vulnerabilities. She had previously dismissed it, repulsed by Gregor's machinations, but now she had scant alternative. Ronan was succumbing, and time was running out. She opened the book, her fingers trembling as she navigated the delicate pages. The ancient script swam before her vision, rife with symbols and incantations that seemed to pulse with a sinister life of their own. She needed comprehension. She needed to find a means to harness it, to weaponize the curse against itself. As she plunged deeper into the prohibited lore, a frigid notion crept into her awareness. What if Gregor had known all along that Ronan was beyond redemption? What if this book was not a beacon to shatter the curse, but a blueprint leading her down a doomed course? A course that would ultimately consume them both? Whispers of a pure golden light lanced through the grimy windows of the apothecary, illuminating swirling dust motes. Anya choked, the reek of desiccated flora and something vaguely serpentine heavy in her lungs. Mother Ilara, her face an intricate map of wrinkles earned through years of potions and poultices, scrutinized Anya over her spectacles, perched low on her nose. Werewolf? Child, those are stories for dim-witted children, not ailments for practical women. Anya's fingers tightened, the sharp edges of the alchemical parchment biting into her flesh. It's no fabrication, Ilara. I've witnessed it. He's suffering. He requires aid. Ilara's sigh resembled the dry whisper of reeds in a wind. Suffering is the inheritance of humanity, girl. Some bear a heavier load. But a werewolf? That surpasses my skills, my understanding. Such beings are an affront. Leave them to the hunters. He's not an affront. He's a man afflicted, and I believe a reversal is possible. Though her voice quivered, Anya met Ilara's gaze without flinching. She wouldn't allow the old woman's skepticism to smother the fragile ember of hope. Ilara harumphed, a surprisingly robust sound from such a frail frame. Hope's a treacherous commodity. Girl. Especially when dabbling with forces beyond your ken. Go home, child. Discard this werewolf. Seek a good match. Raise a family. That's a life worth pursuing. Anya swallowed hard. She had anticipated resistance, but Ilara's casual dismissal wounded her. Thank you for your counsel, Mother Ilara. She pivoted, the herbal scent now oppressive. The following days dissolved into a montage of rejected pleas. Each healer, each apothecary, each crone offered a similar refrain. Disbelief, dread, or curt refusal. Some were compassionate, suggesting herbal infusions for her fancies, or a calming tincture for her vivid imagination. But no one offered a solution, a spark of promise for Ronan's plight. She sought solace in the village elder's crammed library. Old Thomas, a man renowned for his knowledge of local lore and bygone days, peered up as Anya entered, a thin smile gracing Gra. His lips, Anya, dear girl, what brings you to my humble dwelling? Not chasing phantasms, I trust? Anya managed to smile. In truth, something akin to that, Thomas. I'm investigating curses, specifically lycanthropy's hold. Thomas's smile vanished, replaced by a worried frown. Lycanthropy? That's a shadowed path, Anya. Best left untrodden. I know, but someone close to me is cursed. I must discover how to help him. Thomas sighed. The sound weighted with sorrow. Lycanthropy is a potent malediction, child, passed through generations, fueled by base instinct and ancient energies. Little can amend it. But there must be something. Forgotten texts, buried rituals, anything? Anya begged, her voice cracking. Thomas examined her face, his gaze intense. There are whispers, Anya. Legends of a counterspell. But they're fragmented, lost amidst time and myth. And even were they true, the rites are said to be perilous, demanding sacrifices, both corporeal and cod. Spiritual. Anya's pulse hammered in her ears. I'm willing to risk it. Please, Thomas, recount what you know. He hesitated, then nodded slowly. There is an ancient manuscript, kept under lock and key within the monastery on Mount Cinder. The Liber Umbrarum, the Book of Shadows. It purportedly contains lore on varied curses and their remedies, lycanthropy. Included. The monastery? That's days distant. And the monks are secluded. Indeed, they guard their secrets jealously. Yet, it is the only place I can think of that might shelter the answers you seek. Be warned, Anya, the road you tread teems with hazards. Not just from the curse itself, but from those who may seek to exploit it. Anya thanked Thomas, her thoughts already racing. Mount Cinder, the Liber Umbrarum. A tendril of hope, however tenuous, had taken root within her. That night, under a silvery moon, Anya huddled by the fireplace, absorbing the notes she'd scribbled from Thomas. The Liber Umbrarum, the Book of Shadows. The very name prickled her skin. Suddenly, a deep growl vibrated from the gloom. Ronan. He haunted the doorway, silhouetted against the moonlight, his eyes burned with an unnatural fire, his breathing shallow and ragged. Anya, you must flee, you must flee, he rasped, his voice strained to breaking. I can't control it. Anya stood firm, her heart a frantic drum. I will not abandon you, Ronan. Not now, not ever. He staggered forward, his form twisting, bones cracking, fur erupting. Tension crackled through the room, and the stench of wet fur and raw flesh permeated the air. Please, Anya. His voice, barely audible, dissolved into guttural snarls. Anya stretched out her hand, trembling. Ronan. Resist. You are stronger than this. He recoiled at her touch, a spark of recognition flaring in his luminous eyes. But the beast overwhelmed him, consuming the man she cherished. With a final, desperate cry, he lunged. Anya steeled herself, ready to defend herself, to fight for the man she loved. Instead of attacking, however, Ronan collapsed, convulsing in agony. Leave now, he choked out before succumbing to the full force of the transformation. Anya watched in horror as the werewolf, who was once Ronan, writhed and howled, its gaze reflecting both pain and savage fury. She realized she had to go, for both their sakes. But as she turned to escape, something gleaming in the moonlight caught her eye, clutched in the werewolf's paw. It was a small, ornate wooden box, instantly recognizable. It held the vial of wolfsbane, the only thing that offered Ronan even temporary relief from the curse. But why hold it now, in the throes of transformation? She saw the box was ajar, the vial inside, empty. He had ingested it. He was trying to retain control, even in his monstrous state. He was still fighting. A fresh wave of resolve coursed through Anya. She would not fail him. She would uncover a cure, whatever the price. She would journey to Mount Cinder, confront the monastery's trials, and recover the Liber Umbrarum. She would save Ronan, even if it demanded braving the darkest corners of the world. Flight through the woods, the wind shifted, bringing a reek of conifers and loam mingled with a feral stench, damp dog and simmering fury. Beside the snapping fire, Ronan's muscles coiled, his hand finding the axe propped against the wall. "They're on us," he rumbled, the words a low growl. Anya, absorbed in copying notes on belladonna from a crumbling herbal, felt a chill prickle her skin. "Gregor's pack?" A grim nod was Ronan's only reply. Before he could elaborate, the cabin door shuddered under a brutal impact. Then another, and another, each blow imbued with savage intent. They weren't seeking swift entry, they were relishing the terror. "We have to move," Anya stated, her voice remarkably even. She snatched up her cloak and the satchel holding her research, the looming importance of the Liber Umbrarum safeguarding weighing on her. Ronan wrenched the axe free. Not without a fight. He braced himself against the door as a fresh assault sent splinters flying. "Fighting is what they crave," Anya countered, tugging at his arm. "The woods offer sanctuary. We can shake them there." He hesitated, jaw tight. Anya recognized the conflict within the ingrained instinct to defend his home, battling the primal urge to stand and brawl. But they were hopelessly outnumbered. Direct confrontation meant certain death. With a final protesting groan, the door caved, showering them in debris. 3 werewolves loomed in the breach, their eyes burning with predatory light. Gregor stood at the center, his hulking frame eclipsing the others. A rasping snarl tore from his throat, revealing teeth grotesquely elongated. "Ronan," Gregor's voice, a guttural scrape, was barely recognizable. "Return. Your allegiance lies with the pack." Ronan spat on the packed earth floor. "Oh no, pack." Gregor surged forward, and Ronan met him with the axe. The collision echoed through the confined space, wood impacting bone with a sickening thud. But Gregor was too powerful, too quick. He deflected the axe, sending it skittering across the floor, and slashed at Ronan, claws ripping through fabric and flesh, leaving crimson welts on his chest. "Now," Anya yelled, seizing a handful of dried herbs from the table and flinging them into the hearth. Acrid smoke billowed out, momentarily shrouding the doorway in a choking haze, a desperate tactic gleaned from a traveling apothecary designed to disorient, not destroy. Seizing the momentary advantage, Anya grabbed Ronan's hand and pulled him towards the back window. Small, barely wide enough to crawl through, it was their only route. "Go," Ronan insisted, shoving her toward the opening. He was hindering her progress, his wounds already throbbing with fever. Anya didn't argue. She clambered onto the table, shattered the window with her elbow, and tumbled into the undergrowth. Thorns raked her cloak and scored her skin, but she barely registered it. Landing hard, winded, she scrambled to her feet, anxiously awaiting Ronan. He followed, less smoothly, crashing through the remaining shards. He landed heavily beside her, his face a mask of pain. "This way," Anya gasped, dragging him deeper into the woods. Immediate and relentless pursuit followed. The forest amplified the sounds of the chase, splintering branches, the thud of heavy paws on the leaf-strewn ground, guttural roars that sent icy tendrils down Anya's spine. They plunged through thorny thickets, clambered over fallen trees, and splashed through frigid streams, their breath pluming in the frosty air. Ronan was fading. Anya sensed it in his unsteady gait, the ragged gasps he drew. They couldn't sustain this for long. "We have to break their line of sight," she whispered, her voice thin. "Waterfalls a few miles. The cascade will scramble their senses." Ronan nodded, eyes clouded with torment. "Lead on." The forest was their sole ally. Anya employed every trick she knew to outwit their hunters doubling back, using water to obliterate their scent, masking their trail with pungent flora. But the werewolves were implacable, their senses sharpened, their resolve stoked by bloodlust. They reached a ravine, a sheer drop that seemed uncrossable. Anya's heart plummeted. "We're cornered," she breathed, despair seeping in. Ronan, despite his injuries, assessed the chasm with a calculating gaze. "Not entirely." He indicated a fallen tree, its trunk bridging the gap, a treacherous causeway between survival and oblivion. "Are you certain?" Anya questioned, her voice unsteady. The timber appeared decayed, riddled with rot. "It's the sole recourse," Ronan declared grimly. He cautiously stepped onto the trunk, testing its integrity. It creaked under his weight, but held. "I'll go first," Anya volunteered, knowing her smaller frame would exert less pressure. She inhaled deeply and moved onto the tree, placing each foot with meticulous care. The wind shrieked around them, threatening to topple them. Below, the ravine plunged into darkness, a stomach-churning drop to jagged rocks and churning water. She reached the far side, her legs trembling with relief. "You're next," she called to Ronan, her voice barely audible above the gale. Ronan began his traverse, his movements labored and precise. He was midway when the tree emitted another groan, louder this time. Anya watched in horror as a large section of bark peeled away, exposing the crumbling heartwood. "Ronan, move!" she screamed. He quickened his pace, his gaze fixed on the opposite bank. But it was too late. With a final, agonizing snap, the tree fractured. Ronan vanished into the abyss. Sanctuary in the cave, the earth's meager kindness, was a collection of scrapes and stumbles. Anya lurched onward, the liber umbrarum a weighty anchor in her grip, her lungs ablaze with each shallow, ragged gasp. The snapping undergrowth and beastly ululations had faded behind her, a silence bought at a steep price. Still, she knew their respite would be brief. They always returned, hunger a relentless tide. Ahead, the trees relinquished their hold, revealing a black gash in the hillside, a cave mouth. Beside her, Ronan, miraculously upright, listed precariously, his tunic stained anew with blossoming crimson. His breath caught and hitched in his throat. "Anya," he croaked, his voice a thick slurry of agony. "Get out. Save yourself." Her glare met his, torchlight glinting like fractured glass in her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. We're in this together, idiot," she urged him, none too gently, toward the opening. The cave exuded the scent of turned earth mingling with a feral, musky tang that raised gooseflesh on her arms. It was a mere alcove, scraped from the stone, but it offered sanctuary. "Enough!" Anya lowered Ronan against the cool, rough wall, her hands a frantic inventory of his wounds. Gregor's claws had left a deep, weeping furrow across his chest. His left arm dangled loosely, a broken marionette string. "I need light," she demanded, her voice strung tight. Her numb fingers wrestled with the lamp in her pack. Once ignited, the small space danced with a warm ochre glow, etching Ronan's ravaged features in sharp relief. His face, ashen and gaunt, framed silver eyes glazed with suffering. He tracked her movements, his gaze a silent admission of his dependence. The fierce, self-reliant warrior she knew seemed to have receded, leaving behind an unnerving vulnerability that twisted her heart. From her pack, Anya retrieved her medical supplies, her movements honed to a precise efficiency by weeks of patching his increasingly savage injuries. The antiseptic stung the laceration on his chest, drawing a low moan from his throat. "Hold still," she soothed, her voice softening. "This is going to hurt." He clenched his jaw, muscles strung tight. just quickly. As she sutured the wound, she sensed his unwavering regard, a tangible weight, not the possessive, territorial glare of the wolf, but something more profound, more achingly human. "Why?" he whispered, barely audible. "Why are you doing this? You should have run, left me to it." Anya stifled a sharp retort. She'd heard this lament before, this self-flagellating refrain born of his cursed existence. Guilt fueled it, the monster he feared he was becoming. Securing the final stitch, she met his gaze head-on. "Because you pulled me from that wreckage, Ronan. Years ago. You gave me another life. Now it's my turn." His gaze shifted, unreadable. "That was different. I was myself then." "And you aren't now?" Anya challenged, gentle but firm. "Is the wolf all that's left?" He offered no reply, but she saw it. A flicker in the depths of his eyes. A spark of the man buried beneath the lycanthropic layers. Anya fashioned a splint for his arm, using strips of torn cloth and shards of bark gathered near the cave entrance. Crude, but essential. As she worked, their hands brushed, sending a jolt through her. She glanced up, startled to find him watching her. His eyes a turbulent blend of pain, gratitude, and something else, a feeling she scarcely dared acknowledge. "Thank you," he rasped, his voice rough-hewn. "Don't," Anya countered, her own voice suddenly thick. "Don't thank me, just try to rest." She settled against the cave wall, a silent sentinel, as Ronan succumbed to a restless slumber. The oil lamp threw long, grotesque shadows, transforming the cave into a macabre theater. Anya opened the Liber Umbrarum, its ancient pages fragile with age. She scanned the arcane text, searching for any whisper of a cure, a way to break the curse consuming the man she cared for. Hours bled into one another. The flames sputtered, plunging the cave into near-total darkness. Anya's eyes burned with fatigue, but sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. Vigilance was paramount. Gregor and his pack could be anywhere. Ronan stirred, a soft moan escaping his lips. Anya reached out, gently touching his brow. He was burning with fever, a familiar torment that accompanied the transformations. She dampened a cloth with cool water and dabbed it on his face, his neck, his chest. He flinched, then stilled, his breathing evening slightly. As she tended to him, memories of their shared past surfaced, of the night he'd rescued her. She had been so young, so lost in the debris of her shattered life. Then he had materialized, an anchor of strength and compassion, hauling her from the abyss. She owed him everything. Now the tables had turned. He was the one ensnared, the one battling encroaching darkness, and she was his only lifeline. Ronan's eyelids fluttered. His unfocused gaze met hers, then cleared, recognition dawning. "Anya?" he breathed. "I'm here," she reassured. He sought her hand, his grip surprisingly firm. "Don't leave me," he pleaded, his voice edged with raw fear. "I won't," she promised. "I'm not going anywhere." They sat in hushed stillness, their hands entwined, the only sound the fragile crackle of the dying fire. In the fading light, Anya glimpsed the man she loved, the man she vowed to retrieve. And in that fragile moment, she knew she would do anything, risk everything, to wrench him back from the abyss. Even face the pack's relentless savagery, even offer herself as sacrifice. She would save him, or perish in the attempt. The heart of the forest, the cave's confines pressed tighter, the air thick with Rodan's blood's metallic sharpness and a mounting desperation. Kneeling beside him, Anya watched the lamplight dance across his suffering features. Whether asleep or merely senseless, his breaths came in ragged, shallow gasps. A touch to his brow revealed a fierce fever raging within. Time evaporated. Earlier, lost in the grimoire's brittle pages, a prize risked everything for a passage had sparked. A tenuous hope, delicate as spun glass, began to glow. The text spoke of Lunaria argenta, a rare herb whispered to thrive only in the forest's most magically potent depths. Legend hinted at its power to erode dark enchantments, to unravel curses' threads. A gamble, a mere echo of possibility against a roaring tempest, yet Anya grasped it. Lunaria argenta, she breathed, tracing the faded ink. Our only recourse. Rising, her joints protested the hours spent nursing Ronan, she reached for her water skin. The cool draft of fleeting solace. She had no choice but to venture out, to locate this herb. Before departing, Anya gathered her few necessities: a hunting knife, a small pouch holding dried meat, and the time-worn, leather-bound grimoire. Hesitation flickered as she glanced back at Ronan. Even in slumber, pain carved deep lines in his face. "I will return," she vowed, her voice barely a whisper. "I swear it." Damp earth yielded softly beneath her boots. With each step deeper into the woods, the trees ascended, their interwoven branches weaving a dense canopy that extinguished the sun's rays. The air grew dense, humming with unseen power. The forest's usual chorus birdsong, rustling leaves receded, yielding to an unsettling quiet, a silence charged with latent force, a silence that whispered of immemorial things. She charted her course through tangled vegetation, pushing aside thorny tendrils and navigating treacherous roots. The grimoire pinpointed Lunaria argenta's location as "where the ancient stones weep," a convergence of ley lines where the veil between realities thinned. Trusting her instincts, Anya tracked the subtle currents in the forest's energy. A tingling awareness danced on her skin, a prickling sensation that spoke of hidden eyes. The terrain began to descend, leading into a mist-choked ravine. A frigid air, laced with dampness, clawed at her exposed skin. Descending further, she saw them, the ancient stones. Colossal, moss-draped monoliths stood in a circle, their surfaces glistening with moisture that mimicked tears. An unnatural chill radiated from them, a cold that permeated her very bones. This was the place. Within the stone circle's heart, bathed in an ethereal shimmer, flourished the Lunaria argenta. Its leaves shone with a silvery luminescence, its petals a pale celestial blue. It pulsed with gentle light, a beacon of hope defying the gathering shadows. But guarding this prize stood creatures ripped from nightmares. Two grotesque sentinels, vaguely humanoid yet hideously warped, kept vigil. Their skin, a sickly verdigris, stretched taut over bone, and their eyes burned with cruel intelligence. One possessed elongated, spindly arms ending in razored claws, the other clutched a staff topped with a grinning skull. Grotesques, entities of shadow and arcane energy, drawn to sites of power like moths to flame. Protectors of the untamed magic that surged beneath the forest floor, they would brook no intrusion upon their hallowed grove. Anya froze, her pulse hammering against her ribs. A direct confrontation was impossible. She was no warrior. Yet she had to obtain that herb. She inhaled deeply, striving to calm her racing thoughts. "Think, Anya, think." A passage from the grimoire surfaced. The grotesque's nature, their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities. Creatures of impulse, susceptible to distraction by raw displays of force. Reaching into her pouch, Anya retrieved a small vial of oil crafted weeks prior, infused with herbs and spices known to irritate magical beings. She uncorked it and held it near the staff-wielding grotesque. The vial shattered, unleashing a sharp, acrid scent into the atmosphere. The grotesque recoiled, its features twisting in revulsion. It swatted at the air with its staff, snarling in a guttural tongue Anya couldn't decipher. Seizing the opportunity, Anya surged forward, her knife firm in her grasp. She moved swiftly, soundlessly, her gaze locked on the Lunaria Argenta. The clawed grotesque swiveled toward her, its eyes narrowing with predatory hunger. It lunged, claws extended, poised to shred her. Anya ducked, barely evading the strike. She rolled aside, scrambling back to her feet. The grotesque roared in frustration, its claws carving grooves in the stone. Speed and cunning were now her only weapons. Recalling another passage, Anya focused her mind, channeling the forest's untamed energy. She extended her senses, feeling the thrumming pulse of magic beneath her. Concentrating on the grotesque, she visualized its form, seeking its flaws. She saw the fragile pulse points throbbing in its neck, the vulnerable tendons exposed in its wrists. With a burst of adrenaline, Anya launched her knife. It whistled through the air, lodging in the grotesque's wrist. The creature emitted a piercing shriek, its claws retracting. Anya didn't falter. She sprinted toward the Lunaria Argenta, her hand reaching. She plucked the herb from the earth, its cool, silken leaves caressing her skin. With the herb secured, the grotesques renewed their assault, howling with unbridled fury. Anya understood she couldn't stand her ground. Her objective was complete. She spun and bolted, the Lunaria Argenta clasped tightly in her hand. The grotesques pursued, their heavy footfalls resounding through the trees. Anya ran with every fiber of her being, her lungs burning, her muscles screaming in protest. She had to return to Ronan. His very survival hung in the balance. Her life might depend on it, too. The potion of hope Anya's hands, slick with nervous sweat, set the Lunaria Argenta down on the cabin's crude table. Its silvered leaves caught the meager light seeping through the shuttered windows, a beacon in the gloom. Time, precious and dwindling, was a thief in the night. Ronan's ragged breathing served as a grim metronome. She had to be quick. She carefully measured the spring water she'd fetched that morning, her reflection a mask of worry in its glassy surface. The air was heavy, a cloying blend of iron from Ronan's blood and the verdant scent of the woods clinging to her garments. With a mortar and pestle, she ground the Lunaria Argenta, releasing its potent oils in a fragrant burst, a fragile promise against the encroaching darkness. The ritual, a legacy passed down through generations of women in her family, was deceptively simple, demanding unwavering focus. She began the chant her grandmother had taught her, a resonant thrum that vibrated in her bones, weaving words of healing and balance, a plea to the earth and sky for their favor. In the iron pot, the potion transformed, its water shifting to a pale, milky jade. Wisps of steam spiraled upward, carrying the herb's aroma and a silent prayer. Each stir was a supplication, each breath a whispered wish. She clung to the belief that it would work, that she wasn't already too late. A guttural groan ripped from Ronan's throat, a primal sound that sent a shiver of fear down her spine. "Anya?" His voice was thick, slurred, almost unrecognizable. "I'm here," she answered, her voice tight with controlled fear. Almost ready? She carefully ladled the potion into a small wooden bowl, testing its warmth with a toughened finger. Just right. She crossed to his side. A fierce fever burned in his cheeks, painting them with a perilous bloom. His skin shone with perspiration, his body racked with tremors. The air hummed with unspoken energy, a palpable tension that prickled her skin. His eyes, usually like liquid silver, were now bloodshot and murky, reflecting the monstrous conflict within. He looked at her, a fleeting glimmer of recognition battling a savage, predatory hunger. "Don't it get close," he rasped, his voice a tortured whisper. "I can't." "You can," Anya replied, her voice unwavering, a grounding force. Kneeling beside him, she placed a hand on his brow. The heat radiating from him was intense, almost unbearable. "You have to. I'm here. I'm not afraid." He recoiled from her touch, a low growl rumbling in his chest, a caged beast straining at its bonds. His fists clenched, knuckles bone white. "Stay away. Before I—" He couldn't finish, the struggle too overwhelming. Anya held the bowl out to him. "Drink this, Ronan, please. It will help." He shook his head vehemently, a wildness blazing in his eyes. "No! I don't want to hurt you." His words were a painful blow. He was fighting the monster, desperately trying to shield her, even as it clawed its way to dominance. "You won't," she said, her voice gentle, soothing. "I trust you." She edged the bowl closer to his parched lips. "Just a little. Please, Ronan." He squeezed his eyes shut, his body convulsing in silent torment. A strangled sob escaped him. "I can't control it." Abruptly, his eyes snapped open, burning with an unholy fire. He lunged, his hand shooting out with startling speed and clamping around her wrist with crushing force. The bowl crashed to the floor, the vital potion spreading across the bare earth. Anya cried out, pain searing up her arm. His grip was like a vise, his nails digging cruelly into her flesh. She locked her gaze with his, pleading, searching for the man she knew remained, imprisoned beneath the curse's influence. "Ronan, it's me. It's Anya. Fight it," he snarled, the sound animalistic and terrifying, echoing in the confines of the small cabin. His teeth visibly lengthened, his jaw twisting into a grotesque caricature. The transformation accelerated, fueled by the fever and the pull of the rising moon. Fear threatened to engulf her, but she stood firm. She had come too far, risked too much to falter now. She wouldn't let him be consumed. With her free hand, she reached up and framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Ronan, look at me. Remember who you are. Remember the girl in the wreckage. Remember your promise." A flicker of humanity ignited within his eyes, a fragile beacon of clarity amidst the storm of rage. His expression shifted from bestial fury to raw, agonizing pain. "Anya," he breathed, his voice a mere thread of sound. It was enough. It was the spark she needed. Seizing his moment of lucidity, Anya wrenched her arm free, ignoring the throbbing agony. She snatched the flask of remaining potion she'd strategically kept separate and, before he could fully react, forced it between his clenched teeth, tilting his head back until he swallowed. He sputtered and choked, resisting at first, but she held fast, refusing to yield until the last drop was gone. The potion seemed to take hold almost instantly. The feral bomb, gleam in his eyes receded. The snarling ceased, and his taut muscles gradually relaxed. He slumped back against the cot, his breathing ragged but more even. He stared up at her, his eyes filled with remorse and bone-deep exhaustion. Almost. It's okay, she murmured, her voice trembling with relief. You fought it. You're still here. She sank to her knees beside him, relief washing over her in a dizzying wave. It wasn't a cure. She knew that with chilling certainty. But perhaps, just perhaps, it had granted them a reprieve, time to uncover a genuine solution, time for hope to take root. She reached for his hand, her fingers entwining with his. His skin remained feverish, but the intensity seemed to have lessened slightly. She held on tight, refusing to release him. Not now. Not ever. Confrontation at the ruins, the amphitheater's jagged stones snagged at the fading light. Ronan's harsh gasps bounced off the age-worn walls, a discordant harmony against the frantic drumbeat of Anya's pulse. Lunaria Argenta had gifted them a reprieve, a precarious ceasefire with the beast clawing within Ronan, but its duration was finite. The atmosphere vibrated with tension, thick with the reek of turned earth, and something altogether more predatory. Then they materialized. Ebon figures peeled away from the deeper shadows nestled amidst the ruins, solidifying into hybrid forms, men interwoven with wolf. Predatory hunger blazed in their eyes, locking onto Ronan. Leading them was Gregor, a cruel smirk twisting his features. He radiated smug satisfaction. Well, well, Gregor purred, his voice amplified unnervingly by the enclosed space. Look what the storm washed ashore. I anticipated you'd be long flown, little bird. And you, Ronan, a persistent disappointment. A guttural snarl ripped from Ronan's throat, vibrating against Anya's sternum. He lunged, stilled only by Anya's hand gripping his arm. A silent entreaty for control. She needed answers. Why, Gregor? What's the purpose of this? Gregor's chuckle was brittle, a dry rasp against the night air. Purpose? Because power, little bird, is insatiable. And Ronan. He unlocks it. He dismissed Ronan with a flick of his wrist. My pack has become soft, complacent. They're shackled to tradition, clinging to obsolete notions of honor. AA cleansing was required. Ice bloomed in Anya's veins. You intend to use him? Precisely. A manic spark ignited in Gregor's gaze. Ronan, in his heightened state, will decimate them. He'll unleash pandemonium, and from the ensuing chaos, I will ascend. A new alpha, presiding over a pack baptized in blood and fear. He paused, relishing the moment. Ingenious, wouldn't you concur? Ronan exploded. The fragile dam of control Anya had helped construct shattering into shards. You're deranged, he bellowed, his voice already corroded by the wolf's guttural cadence. Gregor remained unmoved. Am I? Or am I merely acknowledging what others are too cowardly to admit? The true nature of our kind. A snap of his fingers unleashed the pack, a surge of muscle and fang. Seize them! The first wolf catapulted forward, a snarling avalanche of fur and fury. Anya reacted on instinct, drawing the silver knife she'd concealed beneath her cloak. Years of rigorous training, honed by dread and necessity, surged to the fore. She evaded the attack, the blade a fleeting gleam in the dim light, scoring a crimson line across the wolf's flank. Anya, escape! Ronan thundered, his voice a tormented blend of man and beast. I can't restrain it. I'm not abandoning you, she shot back, her voice unwavering despite the tremor in her grip. This could be the end, but she would meet it at his side. Another wolf assailed, and then another. Anya navigated the onslaught with desperate agility, parrying, weaving, striking where possible. The silver of her knife offered the slimmest advantage, yet the pack's numbers pressed relentlessly. A searing lance of pain shot through her arm as a claw tore through her sleeve, drawing a crimson bloom. Meanwhile, Ronan was a vortex of unleashed strength. The transformation consumed him, his features warping, his body convulsing. He fought with savage abandon, carving through the pack with brutal efficacy. Yet, even as he shielded Anya, she witnessed the torment in his eyes, the frantic struggle against the predator within. They stood back to back, locked in a desperate ballet of survival amidst the ancient ruins. Anya, diminutive yet fierce, her silver blade a flickering beacon in the gloom. Ronan, a towering behemoth of muscle and fur, a tormented spirit imprisoned within a monstrous shell. An unlikely pairing, bound by a shared history of anguish and a tenuous hope for absolution. A white-hot agony erupted in Anya's leg, pitching her to one knee. A wolf descended upon her, fangs bared, poised to deliver the killing blow. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for oblivion. But it never came. A volcanic roar ripped through the air, sending the wolf hurtling backward, slamming against the stone wall with a sickening crunch. Ronan loomed over Anya, his gaze burning with terrifying intensity. The transformation was complete. The man she knew had vanished. He was a creature of raw instinct, a predator unleashed. He turned towards the pack, a low rumble resonating from his chest. Momentarily stunned by his ferocity, the wolves faltered. Gregor observed, a triumphant glint in his eyes. "Yes, Ronan, unleash your savagery. Show them your true nature." Ronan ignored him. His gaze softened marginally as he turned back to Anya. He nudged her with his snout, a strangely tender gesture despite his monstrous form. "Run," he rasped, the word barely discernible amidst the guttural growls of the wolf. "Get away. I can't safeguard you." Tears streamed down Anya's face as she shook her head. "No, Ronan, I'm not leaving." A frustrated snarl tore from his throat. He knew her stubbornness. He plunged back into the fray, cleaving through the pack with renewed ferocity. Even in his monstrous state, even as he succumbed to the darkness, he was protecting her. Ignoring the searing pain in her leg, Anya scrambled to her feet. She couldn't remain a spectator to his self-destruction. Her gaze darted across the ruins, seeking anything that might offer aid. Then she spotted it. A flash of silver, partially concealed beneath a pile of debris. A sword, ancient and tarnished, yet retaining a keen edge. The kind of weapon wielded by warriors of old to combat creatures like Ronan. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, Anya seized the sword. Heavy and unwieldy, she gripped it with both hands, her resolve unwavering. She couldn't hope to vanquish the entire pack, but perhaps, just perhaps, she could buy Ronan a moment to wrestle with the curse, a moment to recall who he once was. She charged into the maelstrom, the ancient sword raised, a minuscule figure of defiance against the encroaching darkness. The battle had only just begun. The Althus fall, a primal roar tore from Ronan's chest, reverberating through the frosted woods. Gregor, his eyes gleaming with cruel amusement, pounced, claws bared, aiming for Anya's jugular. Time seemed to warp. She steeled herself, the acrid stench of wet fur and malice stinging her nostrils. Then, a gray streak blurred past, a solid mass of muscle and fangs diverting Gregor's assault. Ronan, in his wolf form, had intercepted the attack. Gregor crashed to the earth, spitting out curses mixed with snow. Ronan, momentarily relieved from the Alpha's onslaught, swiveled his massive head toward Anya. Within the crimson blaze of the beast's eyes, a spark of familiar azure flickered, a vestige of the man she loved. "Run, Anya," he rasped, the words a ravaged growl. "Please get away." The raw agony in his voice, the desperate entreaty in those fleeting blue depths, shattered her paralysis. She couldn't abandon him. Not again, not ever. He had shielded her, offering himself as a shield against Gregor's venom. A surge of white-hot fury, of untainted devotion, ignited within her. It transcended mere love. It was a ferocious protectiveness, a deep-seated instinct to safeguard her protector. The werewolf pack, fueled by Gregor's command, surged forward, a tide of teeth and claws. Ronan, though injured, met their advance with ferocious defiance, a spinning vortex of fur and fury. But they were too numerous. Exhaustion began to weigh him down, his movements becoming sluggish, the crimson in his gaze intensifying as the blue dimmed. Anya scrambled back, her fingers instinctively closing around the small silver knife she carried, a relic of her father. Useless against such monsters. Despair loomed, threatening to drown her, but she fought it back. There had to be something, anything, she could do. Then a memory surfaced from the depths of her mind, her grandmother's words, whispered around the crackling hearth. "The blood of protectors runs strong in our line. When darkness threatens your beloved, the light within will awaken." She had dismissed them as fanciful tales, folklore for children. Yet now, witnessing Ronan's struggle, feeling the crushing weight of her powerlessness, something shifted within her very core. She closed her eyes, focusing on Ronan's essence, the echo of his kindness, the bedrock of his strength, his unwavering sacrifice. She recalled their first meeting, that blend of curiosity and concern that had marked his gaze when he'd found her amidst the burning wreckage. She channeled all her love, every ounce of fear, every thread of desperation into that singular image. A warmth bloomed in her chest, a tingling sensation that spread outwards, encompassing her entire being. It felt alien, unprecedented. It was as if a dormant power, a hidden reservoir of energy, had been unleashed within her. She opened her eyes. They blazed with an otherworldly light, a soft silvery luminescence reflecting the moon's glow through the branches. The air around her vibrated, crackling with unseen power. The wolves nearest to her recoiled, their snarls faltering, their eyes widening with bewilderment and trepidation. Gregor, recovering from Ronan's initial attack, froze. His expression morphed from arrogance to incredulity, then to something bordering on sheer terror. What is this?" he sputtered, his voice losing its usual authority. Anya remained silent. Words were unnecessary. The power thrumming through her acted as her voice. She stood tall, her fear replaced by unflinching resolve. The silver light intensified, bathing the clearing in an unearthly glow. "You will not harm him," she declared, her voice resounding with an authority she had never known she possessed. It wasn't a plea, nor a threat, but an irrefutable decree, like the morning sun. Despite his fear, Gregor refused to yield. He had ventured too far, sacrificed too much, to be deterred by some deception. "Kill her!" he bellowed at the pack, his voice regaining some of its force. "She's merely human, a weak, insignificant human." The pack hesitated. They were creatures of instinct, and something about Anya radiated danger, an aura of power beyond their comprehension. But Gregor was their alpha, his word was law. Reluctantly, they began to advance once more. Anya raised a hand. A wave of silver energy surged forth, striking the ground before the pack. The impact sent tremors through the earth, scattering the wolves. They whimpered, tails tucked, their predatory instincts subjugated by an overwhelming sense of dread. Gregor watched in bray. Disbelief as his pack, his devoted followers, cowered before a mere human. His meticulously crafted plans, his ambitions of dominance, were collapsing before his very eyes. He would not allow it. With a furious roar, he lunged toward Anya, dismissing his fear, disregarding the power emanating from her. He was the Alpha. He possessed unrivaled strength. He would not be denied. Anya stood firm, her gaze fixed upon Gregor. No flinch, no retreat. She simply waited. As Gregor closed the gap, she unleashed her power. A torrent of silver energy erupted from her, engulfing Gregor in its blinding light. He screamed, a sound of unadulterated torment, as the energy tore through him, shredding his flesh, incinerating his arrogance. The werewolf transformation he had so coveted, the source of his strength, now became his downfall. The energy reacted violently with the lycanthropic virus within him, contorting him into a convulsing, writhing figure of agony. The other wolves, witnessing their alpha's torture, scattered in absolute terror, their loyalty overridden by pure self-preservation. They fled into the forest, their fearful howls echoing through the trees. When the silver light finally dissipated, Gregor lay broken on the ground, a pathetic, whimpering wreck. He was no longer the imposing Alpha, but a defeated, wretched creature. His eyes, once brimming with malice, were now wide with terror. Anya approached him, her silver eyes filled with a mixture of pity and contempt. "This," she stated, her voice hard and unyielding, "is the price of your cruelty. You sought dominion through suffering, and now you reap what you have sown." Turning away, her attention was drawn to Ronan's prone form. The werewolf transformation had receded, leaving him in his human state, battered and bruised, but alive, barely. Anya hurried to his side, kneeling, cradling his head in her lap. His eyes were shut, his breathing shallow. Fear clawed at her heart anew. Had he survived Gregor's attack, only to succumb to his wounds? She pressed her ear to his chest, listening for a heartbeat, faint yet steady. He lived, but for how long? She had vanquished Gregor, saved Ronan from the pack, but the battle was far from over. Ronan remained cursed, still teetering on the precipice of darkness. And now she was left with a new power to understand. A power she barely grasped, a power that could be the key to his salvation or their mutual destruction. A future forged in light, the mutiny sparked as a quiet disquiet, a tremor through Gregor's dwindling pack. Anya's unleashed power, the almost blinding aura that had surrounded her, had laid bare Gregor's vulnerability. Gregor, now only snapping, attempted to reclaim authority, but his commands rang hollow, his voice a mere rasp, devoid of its former bite. Terror, not respect, had been his tool, but now their dread had shifted, focused on something far more formidable. A gravelly rumble resonated from Boris. A hulking wolf celebrated more for brawn than brains. "He's finished," Boris finally blurted, his gaze darting to Ronan, who stood panting, marred with blood but unbowed, Anya a steadfast sentinel at his side. She shattered him. We follow might. Dissent rippled through the ranks, voices rising in a discordant chorus. The pack's allegiance, always tenuous, splintered irrevocably. Realizing his dominance had crumbled, Gregor launched himself at Boris, claws extended, but his movements were sluggish, lacking their previous menace. With contemptuous ease, Boris sidestepped the attack, and a swift, brutal blow sent Gregor sprawling into the undergrowth. Ronan watched the pack turn, a bleak satisfaction etching his features. He recognized this moment for what it was, a fragile, critical opening. Ignoring Anya's tender touch, he forced himself upright. Enough! Though still hoarse, his command sliced through the chaos with a primal force. The skirmishing sputtered, all eyes locking onto him. Gregor, struggling to rise, spat blood. You believe you can control them, Ronan. You're tainted. A blight. Ronan's eyes ignited with silver fire. I am what I must be, he countered, each word a promise of reckoning. He exploded toward Gregor, a tempest of fur and fury. This wasn't just a battle for leadership. It was a desperate fight to reclaim his very essence, to wrest back his humanity from the encroaching beast. Frail and forsaken, Gregor proved no match for Ronan's unleashed fury. The conflict became a storm of flashing fangs and tearing claws. Driven by a fierce need to shield Anya and reclaim his life, Ronan fought with an intensity he hadn't known he possessed. He evaded Gregor's frantic strikes with deadly precision. Anya watched, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Directly interfering was not an option. This was Ronan's trial, his chance to sever the chains that had bound him. Instead, she focused her energy, channeling her affection and resolve into a palpable wave, a silent pledge of unwavering support. Ronan seemed to absorb it, his movements growing even more live, more lethal. Finally, with a thunderous bellow, Ronan slammed Gregor down, clamping his jaws around the other's throat. A flicker of inner conflict shadowed his eyes. This was the crucible, the point beyond which there was no return. He could end Gregor's life, succumb to the darkness, and embrace the monstrous nature they all feared. Or he could choose differently, pursue redemption, craft a future illuminated by hope. He found Anya's gaze, her eyes burning with unwavering belief and devotion. Her presence acted as a tether, grounding him, reminding him of the man he yearned to be. With a surge of willpower, he released his grip, backing away from Gregor's broken husk. The air thrummed with tension. The pack observed, their eyes wide with a brew of fear and awe. Ronan had spared Gregor's life, but he had also shattered his dominion. Gregor was no longer a threat, only a pathetic remnant. The curse, Gregor croaked, his voice barely audible. It's gone. Ronan felt it, the crushing weight that had burdened him for so long, lifting. The searing agony that had accompanied the transformations waned, replaced by a sense of profound serenity. He looked at his hands, his claws withdrawing, his fur receding. He was human once more, truly human. Turning to Anya, his eyes reflected a universe of gratitude and affection. You did this, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You rescued me. Anya surged forward, embracing him tightly. We rescued each other, she whispered, tears tracing paths down her cheeks. The pack looked on, adrift and uncertain. Ronan, no longer a monster, was nonetheless an alpha, and they were packless. Boris, ever pragmatic, stepped forward. What now, Ronan? He queried, his tone surprisingly deferential. Ronan surveyed the pack, his gaze steady and resolved. Now, we rebuild, he proclaimed. We learn to coexist peacefully, to defend the defenseless, and to wield our strength for the greater good. He paused, then turned to Anya, his voice softening. We forge a future, together. He stepped forward, Anya at his side, addressing the pack. Gregor ruled through intimidation. I will lead through strength combined with respect. Those who wish to follow, pledge your loyalty now. Those who refuse, depart and do not return. One by one, the pack members knelt before Ronan, vowing their allegiance. They perceived the power within him, yet they also recognized something far more profound. A leader who cared, who treasured loyalty and compassion. A leader who would safeguard them, not exploit them. As the last wolf pledged fealty, Ronan felt a wave of hope surge through him. The path ahead would be arduous, but he was no longer isolated. He had Anya at his side, and a pack willing to follow him toward the light. He met Anya's gaze, his heart brimming with love. A future forged in light, he echoed, reclaiming her earlier words. That's what we'll craft. She smiled, her eyes gleaming with determination. Together, she affirmed, squeezing his hand. Always together. Ronan scanned his pack, no longer propelled by fear or vengeance, but by a newfound sense of purpose. He amplified his voice, projecting assurance and hope. We will be remembered not for brutality, but for our resilience. Not for our fear, but for our valor. We are the protectors of the vulnerable, the guardians of the weak. We are the pack of the silver moon, and we will rise. Anew, a resounding howl rippled through the forest, a symphony of voices united in a shared vision of a brighter tomorrow. Ronan and Anya stood together, bathed in the gentle radiance of the rising moon, prepared to guide their pack into a new era, an era of harmony, justice, and unwavering affection. The curse lay broken, the shadow dispelled, and a future sculpted in light stretched before them.